Welcome, gentlemen of the press, to my World Press Conference. I received the judgment of the Imo State Election Petition Tribunal with so much sadness and disappointment. The tribunal had in its judgment dismissing my petition stated that I was unable to prove that there was substantial non-compliance with the Electoral Act in the conduct of the 11th November 2023 Imo State governorship election. According to the tribunal, my inability to prove that there was substantial non-compliance with the Electoral Act in that election stemmed from my non-production of the beavers machine before the tribunal. Besides the fact that the production of the beavers machine before the tribunal was the responsibility of INEC, both as a party to the petition and as a public institution, I had endeavored to ensure that the beavers was brought before the tribunal by obtaining an order from the same tribunal compelling INEC to produce the beavers machine before the tribunal. However, INEC brazenly refused to abide by the order of the same tribunal directing it to produce before it the beavers machine. It may interest you to note that the same INEC had, prior to the commencement of hearing of my petition before the tribunal, refused to grant access to Labour Party accredited inspectors to inspect the beavers machine in line with an order of the same tribunal. This is regardless of the fact that INEC had extorted from me millions of naira purportedly as a deposit for the cost of the inspection of the beavers machine. The said inspection never held, and INEC has held on to the money. Interestingly, the tribunal neither made any comment on this INEC's malfeasance nor sanctioned INEC for flouting its order, which was tantamount to contempt in facie curia, contempt in the face of the court. It is worthy of note that at the stage of the collation of the election result at the Imo State Governorship Election Collation Center, where our party's state collation agent, this gentleman here, the LP state chairman, Barrister Callistus Ihejiagwa, was beaten ruthlessly simply because he attempted to draw the attention of the Imo State Governorship Election Returning Officer, Professor Sunday Fashion Abayomi, to the fact that there was need for him, the Imo State Governorship Election, the Governorship Election Returning Officer, to comply with the provisions of the Electoral Act in paragraphs 48, sub-paragraphs A and B of INEC regulations and guidelines for the conduct of elections 2022, which expressly stipulated that an election result shall only be collated if the collation officer ascertains that the number of accredited voters agrees with the number recorded in the beavers, and votes scored by the political parties on the result sheet is correct and agrees with the results electronically transmitted or transferred directly from polling units as prescribed. Our party state collation agent therefore urged the returning officer to suspend the collation exercise and request for the production of records of beavers accreditation to enable him ascertain that the number of accredited voters agrees with the number recorded in the beavers, and votes scored by political parties on the result sheet is correct and agrees with the results electronically transmitted or transferred directly from polling units. Unfortunately, gentlemen, the said INEC collation returning officer bluntly refused to comply with the mandatory provisions of the INEC regulations and guidelines and mocked our party's agent to go to court. If the INEC collation and returning officer had complied mandatory provisions of the Electoral Act, complied with the mandatory provisions of the Electoral Act and INEC guidelines, the issues of overvoting would have been cured at that point, like Professor Nathan Achonu did in Abia State. My dear compatriots, as we all saw in the full glare of national television, the said LP State Party collation agent, this gentleman here, was not only beaten mercilessly in the presence of state security agents, but was quickly and humiliatingly dragged out of the state collation center as soon as he mentioned the Abia State scenario, where the then sagacious Abia State governorship election returning officer, Professor Nenoti, stood up for democracy against all forces and suspended collation until the discrepancies between the figures in the result sheets and the Beavers report were reviewed, and tented results rejected and discountenanced before a winner was announced. Having sent our party state collation agent away from the collation center with the assurance that he has been securely locked up by the police, the returning officer hurriedly collated and announced the unverified governorship election results, and without let or hindrance in the middle of the night, declared the winner where there ought not to be any. The decision of the tribunal that the Beavers machine must be brought before the tribunal to prove overvoting was hinged on the Supreme Court of Nigeria decision in the case of Oyetola versus INEC in Osun State. A cursory look at that case, gentlemen, will show that Oyetola's case and mine are not the same in all fours. The circumstances are totally different, a world apart. In Oyetola's case, the court was saddled with the difficulty of deciding which of the three different Beavers reports presented by three different parties, all certified by INEC as true copies of the product of the ubiquitous Beavers machine, was authentic. In that case, gentlemen, it was necessary for the court to demand to have the Beavers machine brought right before her for demonstration, and perhaps to undertake a little inquiry of her own as to what possibly was produced by the Beavers in court. In my own petition, gentlemen, there was only one uncontested, uncontroverted, and uncontradicted Beavers report validly issued by INEC. In addition to the Beavers report are uncontroverted testimonies of my witnesses which corroborated the report. The fact that the testimonies of my witnesses were not in any way challenged by any other parties to the petition with regards to what transpired in the various polling units in law ought to be deemed as admitted without more. My case was that the witnesses observed what happened at the polling units, that there were overvoting, and their observations was corroborated completely by the Beavers report. During trial, the tribunal deliberately curtailed the 60 days statutorily allowed by law for me to give evidence in court to 12 days of only 4 hours, thereby making it impossible for all the 1,600 witnesses listed in my petition to testify. Sadly, the said tribunal, in its judgment, stated that the 43 witnesses I was able to call within the 4-hour-a-day hearing was not adequate to justify my claim of substantial non-compliance with the Electoral Act, thereby, gentlemen, standing justice on its head. With the kind of judgment on my petition, the rape of democracy and elections in Imo State is continuing unabated. What the judgment represents is to maintain the status quo of election criminality in Imo State by the use of election tribunals to affirm illegality, election rigging, overvoting, and non-compliance with Electoral Act and INEC guidelines, leaving innocent voters and the actual winners with red noses. Unfortunately, this is not the first time I have come across these dark spots in our election management and justice systems in the course of my political career. In year 2016, the senatorial mandate given to me by the good people of Okigwe Zone was stolen with the help of INEC, who deliberately excluded the political party's logo from the ballot. Then, a few months after, in the rerun election, ordered by the tribunal as a result of missing logo, APC connived with INEC again and rigged the election. Thereafter, in 2019, the same APC candidate printed his own fake result sheets and connived with INEC people to announce him winner in an election against the then PDP candidate. Unfortunately for them, INEC original result sheet had security watermarks to dictate fakes and make it impossible for forgery. Thus, it was not difficult to detect the fake. In fact, it was a public knowledge that the then IMOREC, Professor Chukwuemeka Ezeonu, returned the original result sheet back to INEC because it was not what APC and their hired INEC returning officer used in their declaration. It was also public knowledge that preliminary forensic audit headed by the then National Commissioner, distinguished Professor Ibanu, discovered this fraud and vowed not to be part and parcel of handing over the certificate of return to the APC candidate. The entire fraud was established, but INEC chairman went ahead, in the guise of respecting court order, got another national commissioner to hand over the certificate to APC candidate who did not only fail the election, but had committed both electoral offenses and serious criminal offense of forgery. Where is that result sheet that was supposed to be used to declare that election outcome, which process on return to INEC? Why didn't INEC show Nigerians what was going on and exonerate themselves by showing how judiciary went ahead to confirm the election declared with fake result sheets? I understand that INEC put up a subtle legal opposition, but lately, to give APC an advantage, as such, the submission of INEC was treated as out of time. What did INEC do to the lawyers? Particularly the HOD legal, one Barrister Lekwa, who certified these fake results. They gave him what they refer as punitive transfer to Jos, which was one of the way INEC hides hearing staff who are supposed to be in prison. That singular act of INEC and then HOD legal, Barrister Lekwa, was part of why someone who came forth was forced on Ndimo in 2020. The question is, who certified the fake result sheets used by APC and this one used by Hope Uzodinma in this election? What did Professor Mahmood and his commission do to those people? What did INEC do to stop it and future occurrence? When the PDP candidate pressed with his petition then to get the same APC candidate nailed, particularly after the appeal court affirmed the declaration with fake result sheet, there was an internal process to look at the criminal aspect of printing result sheets and declaring fake results. I understand the white paper came out with recommendation to prosecute perpetrators. Why didn't INEC make it open to Nigerians? And why did INEC chairman soft pedal in prosecuting the offenders, particularly after it was crime of that magnitude was officially established? And the exit of the National Commissioner Ibano, who we understand fought for the discovery of the truth. Since that 2029, it was like the foundation of all manner of forgeries, irregularities, substantial non-compliance, and election fraud, and getting them stamped by the tribunals, who don't care if Imo State and Nigeria is burning or not. Let me emphasize that this judgment has not in any way whittled down my belief in democracy and the judicial process of our dear country, Nigeria. It has rather, unlike the past ones, emboldened me to insist on the right thing being done. Enough is enough.
Exactly.
I will do everything legally possible to challenge the judgment on appeal and up to Supreme Court. I'm very optimistic that justice will be served in the long run because there are still out there so many upright, courageous, and incorruptible justices in our judiciary. Only the few bad eggs are denting their image. Do not forget that the chairman of the tribunal that delivered the judgment in my case is the same judge that delivered that fantastic judgment in Kano State governorship election just last year that almost set Kano State and our democracy on fire until it was rightly upturned and set aside by a full panel at the Supreme Court. My worry, however, is that the level of indulgence extended INEC portends rape for our democracy and death if such continues unabated, as innocent voters and the actual winners are left with red noses. INEC must be made to own up to its failures and the operatives punished for their individual roles. On no account should an INEC officer that refuses to stick to the Electoral Act or electoral guidelines in discharge of a responsibility be allowed to go unpunished, as it is presently the case. Today, many simple issues relating to INEC and their election management prowess in Nigeria has remained puzzles. Who certified the 3 different vowed reports presented by 3 different parties in Otedola's case? Are they still in INEC service? Have they been subjected to disciplinary proceedings? When will the Electoral Offences Tribunal start handing out justice? I therefore call on President Ahmed Bola Tinubu to use his good office to ensure that the electoral system, INEC, and the judiciary are sincerely cleaned before they derail our democracy to the point of no return. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, from the look of things, you planned to be president of Nigeria for a very long time. You worked diligently and built your career from the ground up. You announced to Nigerians that it was your turn to be president of Nigeria. And you worked very hard and did everything humanly possible to achieve that great feat. Now that you have it, what are you planning to do with it? How do you want history to perceive and remember you? I have been wondering myself, and I have not said anything until your recent politics somersault in the last few days, which have given me hope and courage that you will do well as a president. The cybercrime tax reversal, the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road diversion reversal, these are decisions that only a man of great courage and a listening ear can take. And I'm sure that there are many more such good decisions to come. Mr. President, you need to clean house. You need to do a total sweep. As governor of Lagos State, you hire the best hands. Nigeria is a much more bigger challenge, and you need to do the same. But Mr. President, you are going to start with INEC. Without a proper electoral system, we are wasting our time. At the moment, what we have is INEC and some corrupt judges in the judiciary ganging up to impose criminal elements into elected offices. It is a fact that when you have people who people did not elect get into offices, they do not owe anybody any obligation. When they go there, they cut away our commonwealth and they do not blink because nobody voted them in. That is why we have to get that aspect right. Mr. President, we have to once and for all determine whether it is the people or INEC or the judiciary that give electoral mandate and elect people into office during election season. So the urgent place you can do a clean sweep is INEC and judiciary. Because the only way we can have a proper democracy and quality government is if we have an effective and efficient electoral body to allow credible elections for credible candidates duly elected by the people into offices, and then a courageous and incorruptible justice who will readily annul and redress any electoral irregularities and non-compliance with the Electoral Act and INEC guidelines. Mr. President, so many things going wrong in the country that need urgent and sincere reform. Nigeria is bleeding at the moment, and I'm sure you will not want this country to turn to ashes in your hands and in your time as our president. Mr. President, please reach out to the opposition as they are patriots and who have also invested in a lot in a nation building. Mr. President, in the opposition political parties, there are very many intelligent and patriotic men, women, and youths that will help you succeed. For the next 3 years, you have this country to govern. We cannot allow this country to go down. I am not a professional politician, hence I will continue to give you advice irrespective of political party difference. I will continue to give my own quota and support for this country to move forward because what I want is a peaceful, secured, and prosperous country that we can bequeath to our children and generations to come. Furthermore, I'm going to seek for an order of mandamus, compelling the Attorney General of the Federation to proceed against several INEC officers and collation and returning officers who have been guilty of electoral offenses and are walking the streets free while Nigerians are wallowing in poverty and insecurity, which is occasioned by their actions. Let me talk about insecurity, Mr. President. Have you ever wondered how the prison in Owerri, that is surrounded by the government house on one side, police headquarters on the other, DSS head office, the residence of the brigade commander, residence of the police commissioner, was raided by bandits who shot for hours and nobody came, while the military barracks opens just 10 minutes away from there. And the next day, they went ahead to destroy all the surrounding police stations after educating the prisoners that they can go out and feed themselves and nobody will harass them. They kept their promise and burnt all the police stations around. Mr. President, I have made strenuous efforts as a person to fix the police stations in my local government and discuss the ones in my senatorial zone. The first time it was dynamited after I fixed it. We reported to the police, and there was one person that was a suspect who was even accused of murder. To our greatest shock, after we had gone to police and he was arrested and even taken to Abuja, several attempts were made to release him. And when the police prepared the case against him, the then Attorney General of the state released him from prison. Mr. President, you need to investigate what happened in Imo to know the source of terrorism in the southeast. Because it is from Imo State that Abia is being attacked. From the same location, Enugu is being attacked. From the same location, Anambra and Ebonyi are being attacked. And Imo is being destabilized. Mr. President, all this is so that people will be scared and will not come out to vote in an election, so that results will be written. There is no more farming in our place. And there will be famine very soon. And people will start dying of hunger and starvation because agricultural activities have been halted by insecurity, making agricultural products scarce in the market. Mr. President, if you get to the root of this problem, find out who the culprits are, you will see the source of insecurity in Nigeria. You have an efficient security architecture. The DG of DSS is a very brilliant and intelligent officer who can assist you and produce results. During the build-up to the November 11 governorship election, Hope Uzodinma used insecurity to unleash terror and brutality on his political opponents. I narrowly escaped assassination from his men who tried to stop me from attending church program at Obibiezina in Owerri, not local government. The chairman of my party was beaten black and blue at the State Collection Center. We defied all those terror and intimidation to campaign in the entire 27 local governments and 305 wards, including Omuma, Hope Uzodinma's ward and hometown. Then, after taking all these risks and mobilizing people to come out and vote, he thinks he can steal their votes and mandates with connivance with INEC and now Tribunal. It will not happen. Never. We will not allow that to stand. I'm going to pursue my case up to Supreme Court to recover our people's mandate. And I strongly believe that the final outcome will strengthen our electoral jurisprudence. Finally, I passionately appeal to Imolites whose mandates were stolen by Hope Uzodinma and just endorsed by the Tribunal to remain calm, go about their normal activities, but be assured that it is not yet over. I promise them that very soon, by the special grace of God, we will all get justice at the end of our collective struggle as we pursue this case on appeal to higher courts. The labor of our people shall not be in vain, not on my watch. Aluta continua Victoria Asceta. Long live Labour Party. Long live Imo State. Long live Nigeria.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for listening. There have been investigations by Inter-Society, which the public made public. You journalists are supposed to know and investigate and find out if it's true or not. That's the job of journalism, to confirm all those allegations. You understand? It's been in the public domain all this while. That because it is that center on that road to Enugu, where Imo has common boundary with all those people. That's where they live. So where else do you think they will be attacking from? It's from those locations that they move out to attack these states. Because that place has a common boundary with all these states mentioned. And that's their location. That's where the army went and bombed with... yes, the army, Air Force went and attacked. But I'm surprised that the journalists have not exposed all these roads. And you are asking me to... am I supposed to do your job for you?
No, I don't say any mistake. I'm sure those who are...
Well, but you have correspondents there who are supposed to find all these things out and expose the rot. Listen, I keep saying this, gentlemen. I'm blaming the press for what we are going through today. America was the worst country on the face of the planet where mafia bosses appoint governors, appoint police chiefs, judges. They kill in the afternoon, nothing happens. It was journalists that saved America by exposing the rot. Because whatever you bring to limelight cannot be covered again. So some lost their lives. I'm not asking you to go and die. But gentlemen, look, there's time for everything. Enough is enough. Look at, if we had stood up all this while, things would have changed. Please join me and let us stand up and say no to this rot. I'll need your support, gentlemen. I'm asking you to support me, please. Let's fight this fight together. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Any other? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
An appeal. So after that, now Supreme Court will come. Yes. They haven't released the judgment to us. Release it on Tuesday. Once they release it, we'll file it. But it's prepared already because we knew where they were going. When this woman was brought from Kano to this place, I had hoped that as a woman, the milk of human kindness would touch her heart. And with what Supreme Court did to her judgment in Kano, because of her future career, and you understand me, and then the name of her family, and that she would do something different. But, well, it's what it is. You understand? So we're going to appeal that decision, whatever it's worth. No, but let me tell you something. I believe that women can change this country. This judgment does not change that opinion. Because women are the mothers. These children, all of us, they are our mothers. This suffering, they feel it, the pain more. And luckily, there are so many women in the judiciary now. I hope, I pray that they will do the right thing. Honestly. Look at the only woman who has said no to money. The only returning officer who has said no to all this temptation is a woman. Your personal note. You understand? So it has confirmed that my belief. If you come to my company, mostly they are women. Because they are the ones who are upright, who will not want to defraud you and cheat you.
Thank you.
The men who want to take your money, go and share with their girlfriends and give some to their wives.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That's the thing. But the women, they will hold it for their families.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.